Thank you for coming to this afternoon's session, Schoolhouse Commercialism, Marketing and Junk Food, Exploring Policy and Law. Our two presenters this afternoon will present for about 10 minutes apiece, and then we'll open it to questions, are Alex Molnar and Bill Koski. Alex Molnar is a professor of education policy and director of the Education Policy Studies Laboratory at Arizona State University. He has published numerous articles on social and educational policy and practice. For the past several years, he has studied about and written about commercial activities in the school and market-based school reforms, such as private school vouchers, charter schools, and for-profit schools. He has a bachelor's in history, political science, and education, 2 master's degrees, 1 in history, 1 in social welfare, a specialist certificate in education administration, and a PhD in urban education. So he's had a lot of experience with school. Bill Koski, who will be speaking second, is the Eric and Nancy Wright Professor of Clinical Education at Stanford Law School. At Stanford Law, he directs the Youth and Education Law Project, which is an in-house legal clinic devoted to ensuring that disadvantaged children and communities have access to equal educational opportunities. He holds a law degree from the University of Michigan Law School and a PhD from the Stanford School of Education. He's represented hundreds of youth and families in race discrimination, student discipline, and disability rights matters, and is currently co-counsel for major school finance reform litigation in California. As an education policy researcher, he has published articles on education equity and adequacy, accountability, and the politics of judicial decision-making. With that, I will turn it over to Alex Molnar.
Thank you. Thank you very much. School commercialism doesn't sound like a very high-toned subject for an education policy professor. And in fact, when I started looking at school commercialism, gee whiz, in the mid-1980s, people thought it was certain to be a career-ending move. Because who could possibly care about something as inconsequential or as frivolous as marketing to kids in schools? Well, I succeeded in not ending my career, and I have been studying school commercialism lo these many years. One of the reasons that Bill and I are on the same panel today is we collaborated on a brief, as Kevin mentioned, and it's something that we at the new National Education Policy Center plan to do more of, and that is bring together research and policy recommendations with statutory and policy frameworks, so that if people read what is known to researchers and understand the implications of what is known, then they can also have available to them what it would look like in policy and in law if you wanted to act on what is known in a constructive way. So this brief was, I think, the second of 4 briefs that we've now done that we call legislative briefs. And I would urge you to go to the new National Center website and take a look at the 4 that are there. We're hoping that this is something that we can do a great deal more of going forward. But now to the subject of commercialism. Just to place school commercialism in a context, let me suggest to you that one of the ways we might think about commercial activities in schools or commercialism in general is we might think about commercialism as the curriculum of our culture. It is ubiquitous, it has values, and it instructs. And essentially, the overriding message of commercialism, whether it's in school or out of school, is that consumption is good for you. Now, at the turn of the 20th century, consumption was still considered a disease. But at the turn of the 20th century, consumption was regarded as the most appropriate response to a terrorist attack. So it's come a long way. And the purpose of commercialism is not just to sell products and not just to sell a point of view, not just to sell products or services, but to sell the point of view that consumption and material acquisition is the way to happiness and progress. That you literally are what you consume. You are what you wear, you are what you drive, you are how you smell. And if you aren't consuming, there's something terribly, terribly wrong with you. Now, the people who do marketing and the products and services that they market, you'll notice, for those of you that are my age, you'll realize that there was a time when products and services were sold in a rather concrete way. They've become more and more abstract. So it's ideas, it's lifestyle, it's experiences. You know, it's an erotic experience to take a shower if you look at shampoo commercials. You know, you walk past the deli and you get aroused. If you have, if you have a certain hair care product, which obviously doesn't reach me very well these days, or if you have a deodorant, you will be loved by whomever it is you want to be loved by. And if you drive a particular brand of car, you do it because it announces that you damn well deserve it. I mean, you are one tough puppy, loving puppy, cool puppy, whatever kind of puppy you want to be, that's what you are. Now, to some degree, this is kind of fun, but when you look at the history of marketing, what you realize is that marketing is another word in many respects for propaganda. And propaganda is a means of social control. And in fact, one of the leading early theorists of marketing, a guy named Edward Bernays, who was related to Sigmund Freud, both on his mother's and his father's side, which is pretty intensely related, was very explicit about the role of marketing in a democratic society, which is basically, once you've removed the noble class, once you've removed kings and queens, once you've got a mass democracy, there is the question of how you control. And one of the ways you control, and the way you control perhaps, is via propaganda. And so marketing, in my judgment, has to be understood as not just commerce, but as propaganda. And one of the things that you may have noticed in the terms of the trajectory of our public discourse, our civic life, is the extent to which it has been overtaken by marketing metaphors. So our political parties are now referred to as brands. Will the president damage his brand by doing this? Will the Republican Party brand be damaged by that? So now our civic discourse is almost completely captured by the language, the metaphors, the assumptions, and to some considerable degree, the values that inhere in marketing. Well, in schools, and I've done an annual report on marketing to kids in schools. The 13th annual report is actually coming out in a couple of months. And it's called Integrated Kids. What it means, what the title means is that the newest thing is that children are completely now integrated into a marketing apparatus. There are very few marketing campaigns anymore that are single shot, one at a time affairs. They are fully integrated, multi-platform efforts to sway opinion and drive people toward a particular product or service. Schools are integrated into this, and children are integrated into this. Now, in schools, we have a particular problem when it comes to marketing, because we require children attend school, and we require them to attend school on the theory that what's happening in schools is overwhelmingly in their interest and in all of our common interests. When a private interest, such as a marketing firm or the firm that hires the marketing firm, attaches itself to the school, it necessarily undermines that public purpose and that public interest. And this is quite apart from the fact that the marketing activities themselves tend to be disruptive and distracting. They tend to trivialize, distort, and diminish the academic and civic purposes of schools. So there's that issue involved with marketing to children in schools, but there's also the issue of what children are. There's a reason why, as a society, we don't allow children to drive, why we don't allow them to drink, why we don't allow them to buy tobacco. It's because they're not considered adults. And we have a theory of adulthood that says that once a person is considered to be an adult under the law, we assume that they have certain abilities to make critical assessments that will result in good judgments for themselves as individuals and for us collectively as a society. Now, obviously, we've all met an adult or two who doesn't meet that standard, but that's our theory. Our theory is that adults are different than children, and they're different in some important respects. Well, that being the case, it's very difficult to understand a rationale for how childhood is benefited, or how any individual as child is benefited by being the object of marketing. Because marketing necessarily objectifies. It has to objectify people. It has to create artificial groupings that, if those of you, I'm dating myself now, but those of you that read The Lonely Crowd by Reisman, you know, you talk about crowds of people that aren't really actual groups. They're artificial groups. And so we have marketing groups now. We have people that drink Coke instead of Pepsi. We have people that wear this clothing instead of that clothing, and so on. And people who express their individuality by doing the same thing that everybody else does in that group. But they individually come to that decision because none of them magically, as they report on survey after survey, are in the least influenced by marketing. Well, I've come to the view that, and what you'll hear Bill talk a little bit about as well when he gets into the legal aspects of this, is that marketing in schools is inherently harmful to children. That there are psychological harms, that there are educational harms, that there are fiscal harms. It costs money to provide these public institutions as venues for special interests, which is what marketers definitely are. And that I would like to, one of the things that I'm very, very interested in, as many people are now, is the degree to which the obesity epidemic in the United States, as an example, is amplified and promoted by the activities of marketers, and particularly marketers who direct at children, because marketing research has suggested that brand identification is essential early, because it's more potent when a person becomes identified with a brand early, and that brand identification will stay with a person over time, and people will be inclined to spend more money to keep getting their brand that they're identified with. So marketers have a very clear interest in getting children early. So what does that mean when it comes to foods with little or no nutritional value? A couple of things. One is, I can tell you that the greatest bulk, more than 2/3 of the marketing in schools, is marketing of foods of little or no nutritional value. More than 2/3 of it is. It's an enormous amount of money spent to get kids to think that it's cool to consume sugared soft drinks, snack foods, fast foods, and so on. And the apparatus of this marketing now, back to the title of this year's the 13th annual report on commercializing trends, is now seamless, so that there are marketing tie-ins with what is marketed in schools, what is marketed in fast food chains, what is marketed in movies, what is marketed in toy stores, what is on the internet, what is in text messages, what are in games developed for children to play, and so on. So that it's very, very difficult now to tell editorial content or even pedagogical content from marketing content. So that all content is in danger of becoming self-interested content in the sense of propagandizing for a particular product, service, or point of view. And I suspect that this is one of the reasons why our public debate is now so coarsened as to determining matters of fact and truth. We now live in a culture in which it's actually possible to have your own facts.